Mario Hemsley here for Pack Stereo TV, the local zone, the LZ, out in the community at Anaheim Convention Center for the Wizard World Comic-Con tournament, conference. Is it a tournament? It's not a tournament, it's a conference. Hey, it's wonderful, featuring the best of the comic book world. I've been walking around seeing Wonder Woman, Batman, and a whole bunch of other comic book heroes that I don't even recognize. But it's wonderful. We're getting ready to attend the panel right now. This is the panel is called the Way of the Nerd panel. This is for people trying to break into the whole world of writing for comic books. You're going to get a chance to hear from some of the real comic book veterans about their pearls for how to get into the industry, stay in the industry. We think you're going to like it. And don't forget, we'll be back here with a bunch of other recordings, capturing the most of the event tomorrow. Tune in to Pack Stereo, giving you exclusive internet television coverage of Comic-Con, Wizard World Comic-Con in Anaheim. I'm Mario Hemsley. This is Pack Stereo TV for the local zone.
Photo subject, jack of all trades, master of a few. Most of all, though, I do comedy. This is the planetalogica.com block here. We're going to be making some big announcements, talking to some big-time ballers, and just having a good time. If you guys in the back, you're kind of freaking me out back there. I'm not sure if I smell or if it's a vision thing, if you're nearsighted. But to each his own or her own. Hello. Thank you for waving at me at least, if you can see me. Now for the speech. I worked really hard on this last night, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't laugh. My fellow nerds, if you're like me, you stayed up till 5 in the morning last night, drinking Coors Light and watching two beautiful strangers get married. Sweet. But if you're also like me, you live every day doing what you love, and as if every breath you take might be your last. We're here today because we are passionate people, but we all must search for ways to take that passion out here and bring it in here. If you have $1 million, nay, $1 billion idea, how do you take it to the right people? How do you create your own destiny? How do you take advantage of the hundreds of industry professionals here this weekend? Joining us today is a man who's accomplished his goals and lived out his dreams. His new book, The Way of the Nerd, Practical Advice for Impractical People, can show you how to create a career out of doing what you love. Ladies and gentlemen, reading a segment from his new book, author, writer, director, crime scene investigator, marketing guru, and co-founder of planetalogica.com, the world's largest artist agency, and I'm not afraid to say, my friend, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ken Goldstein.
So shy behind the mic, so I hope this sounds okay. So I'm gonna read a section from the book. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. I'm gonna read a quick one, and I was trying to find something in this book, The Way of the Nerd, which comes out in May. So you're all, this is sort of like my unofficial book launch party tonight, so thank you all for being here this evening. Yeah. Thanks to the LA Film School and those guys back there for putting on a concert in my honor for this book tonight, and for May for being here. Anyway, so I'm going to read a quick section of the book. I was trying to find something in the book that would be applicable to Comic-Con, and so I'm going to read you this story. Now, the story kind of picks up in the book after I graduated college in 1990. I was going to college in upstate New York. So I had a girlfriend that was going to school in California, and I was on my way to visit her, so this is where the story starts. I had a girlfriend with a year left at Stanford who I wanted to see, but my real agenda for the trip to California was to meet George Lucas. At that time, Lucas was living outside San Francisco, and I was sure that he'd be impressed by how much I had accomplished during my time at Syracuse University. I figured we'd bond on the college overachiever thing, and he'd help me make my childhood dream come true by hiring me to work for Industrial Light and Magic, which is is his special effects company, for those 2 people who don't know what that is. I arrived on a Thursday evening. The next morning, I took the bus to San Rafael. Once we crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, the driver pulled off the side of the highway at Lucas Valley Road and told me I needed to walk the rest of the way. I'd read enough fan magazines to know that about a mile or so down the road was the magical kingdom of George Lucas, a place called Skywalker Ranch. This is in 1998, by the way, I think, 98 or 99, so I want to say I know there's a movie that came out about some kids getting onto Lucas Valley thing. This is about 20 years before. When I arrived, no one was around, so naturally I took this to mean that I should scale the security gate. As I strolled up, thank you, rock and roll guys. As I strolled up the road toward the main house, I envisioned myself hanging out with Lucas in his famed library, the one that I had read about in all the fan magazines. It was a beautiful vision. And as I rode in the back of the security car that caught me a few yards past the front gate, I held hope that George Lucas would call and have me come back to the library. I must have sat at the entrance to Lucas's property only a few minutes before a taxi pulled up. When it came back out, the driver asked me if I needed a lift, and I hopped in the back seat. "Do you know who was in the back of my cab?" He asks me. "Looked a bit like Grace Slick," I said. "Yeah, Grace fucking Slick. I couldn't believe it when she got in the cab," he said with fanboy excitement. "Last time I saw her in person was at Winterland in 1969 with the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead." "So," he continued, "are you guys working with her on something?" When people talk about being at the right place at the right time, this is exactly what they mean. Though I'd started the day's journey by heading to Skywalker Ranch, what I really wanted to find was ILM. But as Lucas kept its location a secret from the general public, I had no idea where it was, only that it was in the same general vicinity as the Skywalker Ranch. And there I was, in a cab, with a driver who clearly had been around the area for a while. All I had to do was mention a current ILM project and tell him to take me to the studio. "I don't know," I told him. "I've been so busy working on The Rocketeer. Been pretty out of the loop with all the goings-on around here." "Yeah," he replied, "Lucas keeps you guys busy. So where to then? Back to the studio?" So there's actually 2 parts to the whole being at the right place at the right time thing, and I know you shot Rocketeer, right? Yeah. There's actually 2 parts to the whole, this makes it a little uncomfortable. There's actually 2 parts to the whole being in the right place at the right time thing. There's your physical location, and then there's your preparedness. One of my career goals had always been to work in special effects at ILM, so I worked hard to get my hands on any publication that could give me some insight as to what was going on at the studio. Growing up in Illinois, I had no connection to the West Coast film industry. My only links were magazines like Starlog and Wizard, which featured behind-the-scenes looks into the making of films like Star Wars. I also got fanzines and subscribed to sci-fi and Hollywood newsletters, which back then arrived every few weeks in the mail. Can you imagine being at a time when you couldn't just go to the internet and check something? So basically, I subscribed to all these letters, and they would come in every couple weeks, and I'd sit by the mailbox. Anybody remember this? And wait for this stuff to get in. I was also a candy tester at the time, so every other week I get a box of candy in the mail, which you can't do through the internet. This is another disadvantage of the internet. Okay. Where am I? Okay, so when I found myself in the situation with the cab driver who could show me the way, I was able to quickly pull from my mind's memory bank and casually mention stuff I'd read about as if I had something to do with the production. We pulled into what looked like an abandoned strip mall a few miles away from where he picked me up. I waved as he left, and when he was out of sight, I quickly scanned the center for activity. There were a bunch of storefronts, but no customers. And that's when, through an open door, I saw Slimer from Ghostbusters. Has anybody been to ILM? Yeah? Anybody? Okay. Were you in ILM back in the 80s?
No, not in the 80s, like 99 when they were doing Salon.
Did they still have it in the strip mall?
No, it was like this weird, like stormtrooper. It was a weird kind of location.
Was it behind a Circuit City?
I can't remember. It was in San Francisco. I remember just being driven there. And then, I couldn't.
He's got a cooler life than I have, which you guys don't hear. I had to kind of sneak in. But at the time, he had it hidden behind an old abandoned Circuit City in a strip mall. So there were a bunch of storefronts but no customers, and then that's when, through an open door, I saw the bust of Slimer from Ghostbusters. Bingo. I walked in and discovered that ILM was hidden by the facade of an old strip mall. What happened next was nothing short of a miracle. The room I'd entered turned out to be the studio of one of the effects artists I knew the most about from reading Starlog magazine. When I walked in, he was just returning from the bathroom. By conversation's end, he let me shadow him for the rest of the day and do some assistant stuff for him on the set of The Rocketeer. Although it was an unpaid, unofficial afternoon, I left California a few days later, satisfied that I'd made an impression on a company I'd spent my entire life dreaming of working for. When I returned to Chicago, I used the experience to land a gig assisting a special effects artist in Chicago, and ended up getting into commercials. So I'm not going to read too much more, but basically I came back and I had this ILM experience, so suddenly everybody in Chicago was like, that's awesome. So I want to bring Jason back up. The book, The Way of the Nerd, is going to be available in May. You can get it online. thewayofthenerd.com. But let's get into this so we can bring up our second guests and rock on it.
Okie dokie. Joining us on the panel today are, at the end, Joe Vox. Joe was a fine artist who made his way into the world of television. Go ahead. Applaud. In addition to having his artwork showcased around the world, he's also worked as a storyboard artist and director for The Family Guy. And in an upcoming episode, Joe's art's going to be featured in a scene where Brian trips out and gets lost in a painting. Is that right? Yeah. Which is pretty awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Vox. John Schnepp is a writer, director, and producer at Titmouse Incorporated and his own company, Schnepp Zone. Is that right? Good research by me. John has recently worked on, I'm gonna mess this, I can't say this word for whatever reason.
Megacropolis.
All right, that's what it is. Metalocalypse? Yeah! Sounds good. Which airs on the Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. Also, he's directed Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And adding to his cool points are guest spots on Aqua Teen Hunger Force and his work directing episodes for the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is super cool. So John Schnepp, everybody. Peter Tangen is a world-renowned photographer, best known for his celebrity photos and epic movie posters. You've seen his photos on posters for The Rocketeer, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, Easy A, Batman Begins, Wedding Crashers, and Thor. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Tangen. I think we are going to take questions later on, but I'll get things started for us as a moderator / comedian. Let's all have you guys talk about the first moment you realized what you wanted to do with your life. When was this? Either in childhood or adulthood or yesterday? When did you find that out?
We starting down here. All right. I'm still trying to figure it out. In fact, now that I've started doing what I want to do, I think I don't want to do it anymore. It's got to be a better way to make some money. But I was a kid who had two parents that were artists, and so I was always surrounded by fine art and taken to a lot of shows, galleries and stuff like that. But I loved my Star Wars, I loved my comic books, I loved monsters, and it took me about 17 years, maybe a junior in high school, to figure out that I also wanted to pursue a career in special effects, and I didn't get there, but I managed to go to Syracuse University, got a illustration degree there, and went back to New York, and my parents were like, you gotta hit the pavement, you know, you're gonna get work in these magazines and stuff like that. So I'm walking these streets of New York, hitting nothing. I had, 1 or 2 jobs, making nothing, spending all my money just to get into New York, and then getting home to realize I still live at home. But I got a hot tip from a buddy, Ralph Bakshi, who's kind of, if anybody knows his name, kind of an underground, dark figure in the world of animation. Had a small studio in New York, and I got his number and his address from a friend. And my dad's like, just go in, bring your book. He would drop me off. So I go in, and it's a small room, and Ralph's sitting amongst all these like cell vinyl paints. He's working on something back there. He says, hey, what do you want? And, hey, Mr. Bakshi, actually my voice was a little more like, hey, Mr. Bakshi, I'm an artist.
Listen, do your own math and learn from the stuff that you are missing. Create your own path with your own vision.